throwing a lot at Adam and Chris, so thanks. Try to get fancy and, do something a little different tonight, and that's what you get. Should have just stuck with the paper. I'll be back over there where I belong in a minute. You ever been somewhere, or don't touch that either. You ever had something built up in your head and it just not end up being what you kind of expected? Like whether it's a trip, whether it's an event, just something that you think is going to be one thing and, it turns out to be a little bit different, right? We'll dig into that a little bit more in just a minute. Think about maybe an illustration that you can think about. But I had that type of experience this past weekend. Got to go to a concert, and I was pretty excited about the concert because I really like who's playing, and still some good that came out of it, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. It wasn't everything I had built up in my head. I don't want to disclose the singers because it kind of goes into a little bit of the lesson. But I'm going to play a song. Hopefully everything works. If it don't, then we'll back up and punt, and we'll just talk through it and go from there.
Took a shortcut through the woods and I lost my way. It was getting late. I was scared and alone. That's when this kind old man took my hand and led me home. Mama couldn't see him, but he was standing there, and I knew in my heart he was the answer to my prayer. Oh, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours. Show us how to live, teach us how to give, guide us with a light of love. Life held troubled times, had me down on my knees. There's always been someone come along and comfort me. A kind word from a stranger to lend a helping hand. A phone call from a friend just to say I understand. Ain't it kind of funny at the dark end of the road, someone lights the way with just a single ray of hope. Oh, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere up above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours. Show us how to live, teach us how to give, and guide us with a light of love. There were so many faces show up in the strangest places, grace us with their mercy. sing it with me now. Oh, I believe there are angels among us, sent down to us from somewhere above. They come to you and me in our darkest hours to show us how to live and teach us how to heal, to guide us with a light of love, to guide us with a light of love. God bless you. God bless Alabama. Randy, Teddy, I love y'all.
Did you get that working? No. All right, so why did I tell you that story before? I wanted to make everybody cry and play that song. I think job well done. So how many before, so that's Jamie Johnson. I don't know how many people listen to Jamie Johnson, but clearly he's playing an Alabama song. Quick show of hands. When he started playing the song, did anybody realize it was Alabama? Yes, no, recognize the song? Yeah. So, and if you're like me, you kind of have a picture of Alabama. That's not, I threw this PowerPoint together like last minute. So just to give you an illustration, that's kind of what you have in your head, probably most of you, because Alabama is an older group. They were, really popular in the 80s, early 90s, even into the 2000s. But, for some of the, definitely in the mainstream 80s, that's probably what you think of, right, when you think Alabama. That's what kind of stays in the back of your head. That's what you remember. And that's who they are today. A lot different, right? So I'm going to get down off of here and get my notes. Think it'd be worse. No, it picks up okay. Everybody hear me good? Yeah. So like I said, so in your head, you're thinking, Alabama. And that's, in my head, I was excited to go to the concert because I love Alabama and I love Jamie Johnson. I love Jamie Johnson so much that we will play a song at my funeral of Jamie Johnson. I won't say he will play. That will be even better. I'll be dead and it won't matter. If anybody's around at my funeral, you'll get to enjoy that. But that song, and I can't say enough how much I like Jamie Johnson. Not just that song, but a bunch of his music. And that's why. And it's because it touches you and makes you feel that. But like I said, when I had that idea of, hey, I get to go see them both in concert, and I'd seen Alabama in concert, I had in my head, 80s and 90s Alabama. And what I experienced, Saturday, as far as Alabama, I knew what to expect with Jamie Johnson. He's been that way since he was 30. Looks like he's 60, and so I knew what I was getting there. But it was very much different with Alabama. Their song structure was very different. They tried to play a couple upbeat songs, couldn't keep up with the notes, things like that. I mean, Randy Owens, 76 years old. They did much better with their, So again, why not say all that? Because when you think in your head that, hey, they ought to be that, and then when you see them live, if you watch them live today, then like I said, you would have a very different picture. Time has moved on, just like it moves on for us every single day. And, you can tell when you look at their pictures that it's like, hey, you're not the 30-year-old. You're not the 35 or whatever they were in their 80s. They've aged quite a bit, and their performance, I won't say it's suffered, it's just changed. It's changed, a lot from that standpoint. So midway through the concert, I again began to appreciate that, and not necessarily the, upbeat, Alabama that I thought I was going to hear. What does that have to do with spiritual applications? Flip over to, Ephesians chapter 5. This is where the bulk of our thought process is going to come from. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 15 and 16. It says, "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil." I've told y'all before, and or I've made some illustrations that it's probably at least sinking in at this point, but time's something that I think about pretty much every single day. I think about how short life is every single day. I got particular reasons why I think that. And like I said, I used to get kind of bothered by it and even frustrated. Now I just embrace it, and it is what it is. But there's really not a day that goes by that I don't, at some point during the day, feel like life's slipping away. And that's not a bad thing. We recognize that this life is temporary, but it can get you down if that's all you got to live for. And we've talked about that some in Ecclesiastes in our Sunday class, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight, is when we're focusing on redeeming the time, what does that mean? What should we be doing? What should our daily activities look like? What should our schedules look like? What should our life look like if we're redeeming the time? When you look at the word redeem, it's to regain possession of. Okay, that's one way to look at redeem. Atone, make amends, compensate for poor past performance. So, the idea that Paul's talking about there is redeeming the time. You've already had this amount of time that maybe you've wasted, maybe you've just been frivolous with your time, and time is one thing that we don't get back. You can do some things in life and maybe have some financial difficulties, or just some difficulties in general, and you can kind of overcome those and maybe redeem yourself to a degree. But time is something that you can't get back. Once it's gone, it is gone. And tonight I want to talk about how do we make the most of the time that we have left, whether it's tomorrow, whether it's 20 years from now, whether it's 250 years and none of us are here, because we don't know. But how should we be redeeming the time as Christians? The main points there, when you look at chapter 5, verse 15 and 16, he says, walk circumspectly. That's a word that doesn't necessarily mean a ton to me, because I don't talk quite like that. So you can think about it like walking carefully, walking wisely, living wisely. Time is valuable. Evil days create urgency. We need to be very intentional about our life and about our day. It carries the idea of buying up, rescuing from waste, taking advantage of the opportunity before it's gone. And as I said, time is one thing that you can't recover once it's spent. So looking at that, we know that life is short. And this is a familiar passage. We can, if you flip over to James chapter 4, verse 14, James tells us life's a vapor. And, it appears but a little while and then vanishes. I've even done an illustration before on a vapor, coming out of a pot of water and how quickly that's gone. And like I said, we can all look at that like, I could have took the Jamie Johnson song off, and I could have took Alabama's pictures off, and I could have put up pictures of me. I could have put up pictures of Steve. I could have put up pictures of Danny, Bruce, anybody in here. I could have put up pictures of my kids. And, we could have had a big sob fest of just how fast time goes by. We were talking on the way up here. Kimberly and I have been married 17 years, and, that just blew Jovi's mind, because, that really doesn't mean anything to her. It literally means nothing to her. 17 years, and she's back there laughing like, oh, my goodness. But, when I look at Piper and think, hey, I got a 13-year-old, like, in my head, I think, hey, you still ought to be Jovi. And it's literally went by that fast. I mean, like I said, we could put up pictures of Jackson. I scroll through my phone every once in a while, and, you know, look at pictures, and it's just like, man, where did it go? And it ticks on. It hadn't stopped since I've started talking, and it's not going to stop. And so, you know, James chapter 4 tells us life is a vapor. We see that every day. But like I said, I don't think we think about it all the time. And I ain't saying you got to, you know, think about it every second of every single day that, hey, this could be my last second on earth. But we need to be thinking more actively and more focused on what Paul here is talking about with redeeming that time. Flip over to Psalms chapter 90. If I can get there. Psalms chapter 90 and verse 12. And it says, so teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. So when we're looking at that, like I said, life is a vapor. You think about, you know, I mentioned that you could be wasteful in your spending or have some financial difficulties, and we've seen those instances, you know, throughout life, whether it's us, whether it's somebody else, where maybe there was an absent father, absent mother, just some circumstance where they're chasing to try to make that time up, and you're not going to get it back. And that's why, you know, today matters, the present, being in the present matters, and then, you know, planning for the future as the Lord wills matters. What do you think, and I'm looking for some feedback here, what do you think Paul means when he says the days are evil? Redeem the time because the days are evil.
They will try to steal the time away from you.
Who will? The devil will. Kenneth's always going to put it a little bit better in words than we can, Chris, so don't be hurt by that. Yeah, Kenneth said a spiritual unawareness. Chris said, you know, the devil's trying to get us to think that we have more time, and I think they're spot on that. That's some of the same thoughts I had on that. So, you know, one of the things I put in here was the reference to Paul Harvey's, you know, if I were the devil. Everybody's heard that, you know, several times. He goes through a list of things. If I was the devil, I would do this. If I was, you know, the devil, I would, you know, do this, and list out several things. And basically at the end of it, it's the you know, the way I would say it is, hey, the devil's perfectly, you know, completely fine with you being lukewarm. He don't need you to be some sinful, just murderous, you know, drunken whatever. He just needs you to be distracted and not focus on spiritual things. And that is what I think Paul's referring to when he says the days are evil. Because you can get up and, you know, go through your day, and life can be life on this earth, and it can get busy, and the day can slip by, and you haven't had very much spiritual engagement. Maybe you haven't, you know, prayer, you haven't, you know, read any of God's word. Maybe you hadn't even thought much about God that day because your mind's been so many other places. Again, I know how my mind works. I'm not preaching to the choir up here, so I know there's been several times where, like I said, days close to the end, and it's been consumed with a lot more than maybe this or even spiritual thought processes throughout that day. And that's what I think Paul is talking about when, you know, when he's talking about, you know, the days are evil. So a couple things, you know, examples of, you hear the phrase, time is a thief. So a couple examples of thieves, time thieves. Endless entertainment. Another way to say that is do as you please. And that's pretty much our society. Our society would tell us to do as we please. And like I said, when I'm, you know, kind of making these notes and stuff, I'm talking to myself more than I'm talking to anybody else. I can easily look at my schedule and see plenty of entertainment. And with 3 kids, you know, there's going to be some entertainment mixed in there with various activities and things that they are involved in. But that can consume you. It can be all you do. Laziness. What do you think the difference between laziness and rest is? Anybody? I don't have a right or wrong answer. I'm just curious. I like that. Uh, Laziness, sinful habits. Jeff, I'm going to butcher the entire quote, so I'm not going to say the entire quote. But Jeff McCreary used to have a saying about sin, and at the end of it, it was that it would keep you a lot longer than you ever planned on staying. Basically, that it's going to take you deeper and further than you ever wanted to go, and it's going to keep you there longer than you ever wanted to be there. And there's a certain aspect of that, hey, it's going to consume your time. You're going to be eat up with that, doing things that you shouldn't be doing, and it's going to consume your time. Constant distractions. Everybody's got a phone. We talked about a phone a few weeks ago. I dug into that a little bit further. You know, all the things that we have are great and wonderful on a certain level. I enjoy my phone. I enjoy my GPS every single day I get in there and drive. And I mentioned, help me out the term, Adam, in Apple, for your screen time. Screen time, there you go. I just need to look at you. That's all I need to do. Screen time, I mentioned your screen time. Like I said, if you got a smartphone, you get a notification. I get one every Sunday morning before I come in here for some reason. It gives it to me on Sunday at 9 o'clock. What my screen time is. So I get a nice reminder of what I did that past week on that thing. And most of the time, if I had to take a guess, you're kind of like me. You may get on something, especially if it was social media or something else, and you may think in your head, hey, I'm gonna go check XYZ, or I'm gonna go look up XYZ, thinking you're only gonna be there for maybe a couple minutes. Most of that ends up being, on average, at least 20 minutes spent, okay? And then we check our phones hundreds, literally hundreds. I mean, there's statistics out there, hundreds of times a day. And so I like math and I like numbers when you talk about things like this. If you took 20 minutes extra every single day, that's just one time that you did that. 20 minutes extra every single day. You know how many hours that is in a week? 120. How many do we typically work in a week? 40. Yeah, some of us more, some of us less, just depending, but typical, government terms, 40-hour work week. That's 3 full weeks worth of work that you spend on that phone. And I'm not here to sit here and just bash phones all night. I'm as guilty as anybody else. But when you think about that amount of time, and it's very easy, the trap there is, just like the sin trap, is to just inch along, and frankly just be distracted. And to not think there's an issue or to not think there's a problem. And, if I handed somebody a phone, the first time you ever got a phone, and I said, man, you're going to spend 3 full weeks a year looking at this thing. 3 full weeks looking at this. Do you want it? You'd be like, I'm never going to look at it that much. But in those little 20-minute increments, 10, 20, 30 increments, it don't feel that bad, and it tricks you. It tricks your mind. Hundred percent. I can tell you the times I pull out that phone and end up spending way too much time doing this is when I don't have a purpose, when I'm just aimlessly living. I had a friend that one of his favorite sayings is an idle mind, or idle hands are the devil's playground. For a while, he would say that's in the Bible, and finally I looked it up one day. I'm like, I don't think that's actually in the Bible anywhere. It's good saying, but it's not in the Bible anywhere. So I agree. A lot of it is that idleness. And like I said, we could talk more about phones, not going to. But just to emphasize that, like I said, Satan doesn't necessarily need us to be just rotten, sinful people. He needs us to just kind of go through day by day, week by week, and just not pay attention to God, and just not pay attention to the things that we need to pay attention to. And the reason why that's important is, like I said, we know that time is temporary. We know that this earth is temporary. And at some point, we're going to have to meet before God in judgment. Flip over to 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Second Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive the things done in the body according to what he has done, whether good or bad. And then Ecclesiastes 12. Ecclesiastes 12 and verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil. So a lot of times, like I said, I don't know exactly what Judgment Day is going to look like. But, sometimes in my simple brain, you think, hey, you're going to get, discuss all the good things you did and all the bad things you did. And not to say that one's got to be lopsided, because it doesn't work that way either. But, again, in my head, clearly everything's going to be revealed. And so, more so, not necessarily every single thing that you did bad or every single thing that you did good, but I think we're going to have to answer for opportunities that we didn't take advantage of, opportunities that we missed out on, or we didn't seek out opportunities, influences that we didn't take advantage of, influences that we could have had on people. So again, I don't think there's going to be some whiteboard up there with, hey, here's all your sin and here's all your spiritual things that you did. But you're going to have to answer for life. And how did you redeem your time day in and day out based on the time that you were allotted? So what are some ways that we can redeem the time as Christians? Prioritizing spiritual growth. Flip over to Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. And then Acts 17. And verse 11. These were more fair-minded than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness and searched the scriptures daily to find out whether these things were so. So you can see, we're told to seek first the kingdom of God. That's an active thing. That's not a one-time, hey, I did it, check the box. Like I said, you see in the very next verse, hey, they checked the scriptures daily. They were in God's word. They wanted to know what God's will was for them. And that's what we need to be doing. There's different ways that we can do that. Obviously, reading the Bible is one. Doing what we're doing tonight, having a Bible study. Prayer. We can spend a lot of time in prayer. Meditation on Scripture. Maybe it's something that you don't understand. Study it deeper. Think about it. Think about, hey, I mention a lot of times, hey, make the needed corrections in your life. Think about those things that you read and go, hey, am I lining up with this? We all have corrections that we can make literally on a daily basis. And just like those little distractions, they might not be this big giant leap, but those corrections can be little inchworms too, to make those corrections. And so, one thing that came to mind when I was thinking about just people. We have plenty of biblical examples, not taking anything necessarily away from that. But, you know, when you think about people and who you think would redeem the time or who you've seen redeem the time, don't worry, I'm not going to call on anybody. I do think we have people here that redeem the time very well. I'm not going to embarrass you or try to highlight you. But, you know, my great-grandmother was old from the time I knew her. Like, she's just old. And, you know, and for a while she lived up by herself, up in Marion County, up in Winfield. You know, we'd show up there, she'd be raking leaves, doing stuff by herself. And then eventually she, you know, moved in with my pop and granny. But I remember even when I was a kid, like, even when she still lived by herself and she would just come visit, there were plenty of times that as a kid, I'd be in there playing with toys, you know, doing whatever. And I was old enough to, I mean, I vividly remember it. So I wasn't necessarily Joey's age, I don't think. You know, probably a little bit closer to Hudson. But there were plenty of times where I was doing something as a kid and she's sitting over in a chair in the corner reading her Bible. And like I said, and that was multiple occasions. Now, again, she was old, and, you know, if you backed up to her 30s, you know, did she do that? I don't know. I wasn't around when she was in her 30s. But I know it was something definitely later in life that was way more important to her, and that's how you can redeem the time. You know, there's only so many things that, one, she could do, but she knew that, hey, you know, frankly, on this earth, I only got so much more time, and I'm pretty close to probably what the allotment is based on statistics. You think about other people, like I thought about Jackie Richardson. When you think about people, you know, that redeem the time well, and all the time that Jackie spent at the camp doing, you know, what I would call the Lord's work, you know, trying to bring the gospel to Christians, to people. Had various camps. He preached the gospel. Like, he's somebody that I would look at and said, hey, you redeemed the time. If I look at his life, you know, I would say, hey, you've redeemed it. Not that I'm the judge or anything, but there's times where I can look at my life and go, hey, you're not redeeming it. Too many times versus, hey, I am redeeming it. And that's not to say that, you know, hey, I'm going to quit my job tomorrow and necessarily start preaching or open up, you know, a youth camp, or sit in the corner at my house all day long and read the Bible. Nothing wrong with that either. I don't think we know that that's not necessarily practical and things like that. And so not trying to take it to the far end of the extreme, but there are plenty of days where, like I said, if you had to give a simple yes, no on my tombstone, did you redeem the time, did you not? The no might be there more than I would want it to be. No, I absolutely think it is, Chris. I mean, I think that's the reflection we all kind of need to think about, again, myself included, is, you know, am I redeeming the time? Like, what does that mean? What does it truly look like to do that? And are we doing it on a daily basis? And like I said, you can reflect back and go, hey, I haven't. So what corrections do I need to make going forward to better do those things? Simple, easy things that you can do. You can encourage someone. You can teach your kids. You can invite others to worship, helping the weak. There's things that you can redeem from a standpoint of, you know, we're called to be servants. We can serve one another. As I get older, you know, hey, I might not be able to go cut up a tree for somebody, but I could do it now. And so, you know, that looks different based on your age and ability, but there's plenty of things, like I said, on a daily basis. Sharing the gospel, obviously, is one of them. And too many times I do think that we think, hey, if we're not doing something as structured as what we do tonight, that's not necessarily redemptive, if that's the right way to use that word. But when you look at Jesus, he had a certain mindset and a certain urgency that he knew the end was near. He knew that, his life was not going to be forever on earth. And he took advantage of situations where there were meals, on simple walks, simple conversations, interruptions, where he could have that conversation with somebody, so he could have that influence, so he could share the gospel, and he could redeem that time that he's been given. And that's one thing that I think, like I said, sometimes we kind of, and again, that could be Satan thinking that, hey, if you're not doing something super structured, that doesn't quote unquote count, or that no, that's not the time for this, that this is the only time that we can be doing these things. I had a couple questions. I know we're down to maybe a couple minutes here. So I'll leave you with a couple questions. We want to answer them, and then I'll finish up a couple points. How can a person tell the difference between rest and laziness? We covered that one. If someone looked at your schedules, what would they conclude matters most to you? Again, I got a work schedule, you could pull it up. I got a personal schedule, you could pull it up. What does it say about you? Are there good things in life that can still keep us from redeeming time? Again, not to answer every single one of them. The answer is yes. Nothing wrong with doing quote unquote good things, wholesome things. But if we're doing too much of those things, we fall into that entertainment all the time, and we're not redeeming it. What opportunities do we often overlook to influence others spiritually? How would our daily decisions change if we constantly remember life is temporary? And one thing to add to that, there's songs about that too, but, if you knew God was coming next week, what would your life look like up until that point? Like if you knew, he's coming back next Wednesday, I bet these next 6 days would change drastically. They would for me. We're not given that, but even if you knew, hey, he's coming in 5 years, those 5 years would look a lot different. What is the one practical way you personally could redeem your time better this week? So going back to final thing, we are all going to have to give an account, and we know what that means. This is not the invitation, but closing remarks. I watched a documentary, probably a big waste of time, on Hulk Hogan. And long story short, his big thing towards the end of the documentary was just how much people were going to talk about him for years and years and years and years. Like he referenced himself that, hey, I'm going to be talked about like World War II. I'm going to be talked about like all these major historical events. And I got done watching it. I was like, man, like what a waste. Like that's what there are going to be people that remember him, no doubt about it. But I guarantee you, I could ask Hudson Bates who Hulk Hogan is, kind of knows. Hudson Bates' son, probably not. And same thing, like before, when you're looking at Alabama and what I had in my head, they got 41 number one hits. They had a 21 consecutive number one singles back in the early 80s. They got 3 Grammys. They got Artist of the Decade, Entertainer of the Year several times. They sold more than 75 million records, and none of that's going to matter. And it ain't going to matter for us. I'm going to have all the accolades. I can have X, Y, and Z, but if I didn't redeem the time the way God wants us to redeem the time, none of that's going to matter at all.
Not as tall as JoJo. We'll read from Joshua chapter 24, verse 15. It says, "And if it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the God your fathers served in the regions beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." At the beginning of this verse, he says, choose. They had a choice to make. We all have choices to make all the time. And if you notice their options here, there was not an option to remain neutral. There was not an option to, as sometimes we will say today, hard pass. I'm not going to choose. They had to choose. You got to choose whether you're going to serve the gods of Egypt, you're going to serve the gods of the Amorites here, or you're going to serve the Lord. Those are your three options. You got to choose one of them. Similar today with us, we have choice to make when it comes to serving God. And our choice can't be, oh, I'm just not going to do anything. You will either serve God or you will not serve God. So, you know, the things we do in our life, many times when it comes to how we serve the Lord, there are choices. And, you know, I was thinking, when you think about it, why are there reasons that we make bad choices? And you'll hear people say, I couldn't help it. That's not accurate. You have a choice. You're not made to do something. You're not forced. Now, you may have gotten to a point with choices in what you did up to the point of sin, to where you got into a situation where you had just backed yourself into a corner, but you made choices all along that put you in a situation. Sometimes our choices are a result of the people we might associate with, and they put us in situations, or we're put in a situation where we feel like, you know, we're peer pressure, and we make that choice. But the choice was made way before the actual point of a hard choice had to be made. Is you were choosing bad associates, perhaps, or you were choosing to put yourself in a situation or a place that tempted you, and then based on where you were, you made a bad choice. So think about these things as we go through our life. We have a choice. You may have a choice tonight. If you have never obeyed God, if you've never obeyed those first principles, you have a choice right now. Do I know what I should be doing, and am I going to do it? If you know you have things in your life that you need to change, you have a choice tonight. You can make that change, whether it's private or if it's a public nature that you want to handle, and make that right choice. It's always another thing to think about in those choices. So many times when we make that snap decision and go one way or the other, we are not considering consequences. We do not think about what this choice I'm making right here is going to do to me long term. We're thinking about the here and now. JoJo mentioned it about the end of the class. If you knew the Lord's coming back in 5 days, you would be worried about what you're doing right now for those 5 days. When in actuality, that thing you're doing right now still matters with the consequences, whether the Lord comes back in 5 days or 500 years. It doesn't matter. You need to think about consequences when you're making choices. So if there's anything we can do for you tonight, either privately, publicly, if you need help of anyone, come to us. If you want to prayers of the congregation, you want to come forward as we sing this song. Before
pledge my love unto you. I worship you in spirit. I worship you in truth. Make my life a holy praise unto you. On bended knee I come, with a broken heart I come, bowing down before your holy throne. As I look upon your face, show your mercy and your grace. Change my life, O Holy Spirit. Make me fresh and ever new. Make my life a holy sacrifice to you.
Robbie will lead us in a prayer, and then we'll have announcements. It is good to see everyone out tonight. Go over some of the ones that we need to remember in our prayers. Lanny and Tanya are both home with